Hi, today's going to be a little different than the typical video. I'm going to discuss design principles, but I'm going to go through art composition relating to paintings that you can then apply to designing your bonsai. And this will help you take your bonsai to an entirely higher level uh, when you put in these considerations. So here I'm in my little studio at home. It's a painting I'm working on now, um, using my daughters as reference, and a book that my daughter's reading and very interested in is what propelled the idea for this. And I think the book is what was it, a crown of thorns, something like that. I don't know, but so there we go there, and I think I'm also using some pictures from Zermatt, Switzerland as a reference. So if you follow me on Facebook or in a future YouTube video, I'll show you how that turns out. Um, Recently, I did a master study of Waterhouse's painting The Siren. Um, of course, I'm working in acrylic, and the canvas that I had was slightly wider than the size of what the original was. So I had to extend a little bit of the picture to the sides, but I wanted to learn from copying a master, and so that's where this painting originated. I'm pretty proud of it, and I really like it on my wall. It looks good. Um, but the things I want to point out are design principles that we'll see that Waterhouse did, but I'll show you other paintings I did and point out various things I did that can then be applied to our trees. In this painting, you can see, let me use a brush as a handle here. You can see how the use of line, there's lines like the arm coming up, then the curve of the body. All these lines help direct your eye to where the artist wants the viewer to go. And you do the same thing with your trees. You look at the line, brings you in the focal point. Usually in a painting, not always, but usually the focal point is in the corner of one of the middle third of the painting. And one of those corners is usually that's what they call the rule of thirds. If you break things in thirds, usually like right in the corner of this third is like, they're rules. I mean, eventually you can break them, just like all the other bonsai rules you learn. But they're based on the science of what people find appealing when they look at something, even at a subconscious level. They're not even aware of it. But, when you have a really nice piece of artwork, sometimes you're like, you look at something and you just love it, the appealing. And a lot of times it's these principles that are at play. So yeah, it controls your eye. There's curve to bring you back in. So if you had a line without something to stop it, your eye would tend to go off of the picture. But you want to keep somebody on your tree or on your painting as long as you can. So you direct the eye, and you can, by little breaks, you could slow the eye down, or if you have a nice strong line, you can speed it up to get to where you want them to view. And then you could have, little bits of eye candy, bits of, other little devices and lines and stuff to slow you down. And you can see this middle third, you're slowed down to keep your eye more here. That's the focal point. But also, there's horizontal lines at the top. There's angled lines to point you. You get these little islands from the side that come over, pointing you this way. So everything's trying to keep you interested into this painting and keep you looking at it as long as possible. Now that's line. It's the same goes, and then when it comes to designing a painting, also you consider shapes, and you want to vary your size of your shapes and the types of shapes. So if you broke this painting down to simple shapes, you'd see rectangles, circles, you'd see triangles, triangles. You'd see cylinders. You'd see verticals, horizontals, things that keep it interesting to the viewer. And also you see, another major important thing with a painting, and can be considered in your trees is also change in value, your darks and your lights and contrast with each other. Which could be the contrast of your bark with your foliage pads, or with a piece of deadwood, sherry, which you bleach and in contrast, and those value changes cause interest, especially if it happens in the on the edge of a middle third. You could do the same thing with your tree, and it will make that tree all the more exciting for somebody to look at, and more appealing. A lot of times people get into all these, the basic design ideas of bonsai, and they look at the different styles, but they're not considering these other artistic principles, and they really could go all that one step better in the design of their tree when they consider these principles. And if you notice, another thing that you try to create in a painting, but you also want to create it in your tree, is depth. And if you notice how you do that, that's why, the back branches of a tree are very important. You don't say, oh, I don't see much of it, and then ignore it. No, you place them in such a way to create that depth. And usually when you're seeing through your tree to the back of the tree, it's kind of faded. It's more in shadow, or, less clear as what's in front. The line is clearer in the front. It's more broken in the back, and things like that. Well, in a painting, depth is created, using perspective, where things get smaller the farther away you go. But in addition to getting smaller, the coloring gets, kind of dimmer or lighter. With color, colors will change to a lighter, bluer version of that color. If you look at the Woodhouse's, my painting, which is a study from a Woodhouse painting, if you look at the blues way in the distance, they get almost whitish. But as it comes forward, it gets bluer, then greener, then there's even bits of red and green, which is why you see, the red and blue, they mix a purple, and you start seeing that as you come forward. And it gets, which is also a matter of cooler and warmer. Warmer colors bring you forward, come towards you, and then cooler colors recede. A big principle in painting, but also could be applied to foliage. If you're doing a group painting, you will consider that when you do your grouping of trees. If you have, let's say you're doing elms or hornbeams, especially if you have different varieties within that same type of tree, and some have a darker leaf or a lighter leaf or a smaller, just like you would with size, smaller you'd put back further. Well, also the grayer or duller or lighter color would go back further, and that helps create the perception of depth. So just like you would do it in a painting, you would do it also in your tree. It's another painting of mine I've done recently. And you can see if you follow the different forms, just like you would a line, it brings you towards the focal point, which is right here. I've got, the Shoujo spirit, which if you look up, it's a Japanese sea spirit, which looks like an orangutan and likes to drink sake. Very interesting, but he's pointing down, highlighting my head, which is also based on something I saw in a famous painting by, I believe, Michelangelo, the creation of Adam. Touching his head, it's lit up there. It's the highlights. That's me on my phone falling asleep. And the title for this piece, by the way, is Hypnagogia, which has to do with the state between waking and sleeping. You can see my painting, flowers coming off of it, falling all over me. It says, wake up. You got birds in the background flying, and all these, and that's to keep you from going off the page. See, it's kind of, if you look at it, it's almost like a line. It also gives the impression of movement. You got the wind blowing the hair of the Shoujo spirit in the same direction the birds are flying. And if you look at the masses, they're wider here, and then they narrow down towards me, which controls the viewer's eye. And then with the different things going on to look at, it keeps you mainly focused here. But there's enough interest that you start noticing these other things. The bird, the musical tones that are actually the notes for the beginning of the song Impossible Dream, which is one of my favorite songs when I need motivation. I listen to that, especially the Luther Vandross version. I've got my bookshelf with some interesting titles on it, and I used myself as the author on this book as my signature. But a painting I like. I'm going to move on, do some other paintings, see what I can point out compositionally that can be applied to trees. This also goes for portraits. So let me go over to a portrait I did of my fishing buddy Bob. Right here, this is one I did a few months back. But if you look, you can see how I have lines. See, here's the line of the snowbank on this creek. You got rocks here, and the rocks are pointing over to Bob. I got the line bringing you up, and continues with the curve of the arm, which brings you right back to the middle third, which is his face, which has kind of a rugged, cantankerous look. It's got warmer colors. There's red. Even in the sleeve, just before you're getting up to him, is yellow. The warmer colors, so it brings you forward. Even his position gives you the impression he's leaning forward into you, which is the impression I wanted to give. And then you can see it's warmer colors, even in the jacket with the greens. It's got greens that have yellow mixed in, so it's a warmer green. Then you see cool colors, the snow and the type of greens. I use a lot of phthalo green in the back. And even in the back, I use directional devices with line. These little trees weren't in the reference that I had, but I put them in to keep you from following this and going off the canvas. It controls the eye and brings you back over to Bob. And also the branches here, which were there, but I extended to touch them. Another thing, you don't want something to just kind of rest against one object to rest against another one. You either have to cross over or have a space between. And you're subconsciously just find that more appealing. So I had it go right in as if it's behind the hat. But yeah, there's devices. You can see there's interesting shapes of different sizes. You're looking at the water, the triangles, the cylinder, the squares, rectangles, cones in the back, all used to keep you interested. The perception using colors, temperature and color, and the value change, contrast with light and dark, the dark of the shadow of inside the jacket versus sets off the face, the same with under the hat. All these principles could be applied to your trees. Here's another painting I did of a beach scene. It's not exactly the corner of the middle third, but it's middle third-ish where the highlight is, and then, the reflection, which is where, I want the eye to be most interested in. But, I have this bush here, which is a little different from the reference, but it keeps you looking towards that. And then I have horizontal lines. You come up this tree, but there's lines breaking that up to keep you from going off the canvas. So you've got larger shapes and dark shape, light shapes, different shapes, the water, the sky. You got the warmth bringing you forward in the ground with the red versus the blue-green, and getting lighter as you go into the distance. And then another thing to mention is, it's also edges. You'll have hard edges along a line on the edge of something, but you also have soft edges like you would in these trees. So it just causes variety and contrast, creating more visual interest. And it's the same in a tree. You can have foliage pads that kind of partially overlap, so you don't always have a clear line of the pad outline. So that kind of softens that edge in contrast to the line of a sherry or the side of the edge, a line of part of the tree trunk. And all these things consider, along with the way it's potted, the pot itself, especially when it comes to color, you use these principles of art. There's a painting of my grandson up there, applying a lot of these principles. Here, I'll show you another painting. I can show you some other stuff. There's a painting from a friend's Facebook picture that I changed it a little bit, but used it as reference. And I did an underwater diving scene. But you can see it wider here, and then it narrows down into here, into the circle, which is where the highlight is. That's what it's like, the journey of this man going to this. I'm wondering what the discovery will be, and then I have something that comes out to keep you from going off. There's horizontal lines here. There's shapes that are different that bring you up that way. You got lines here that bring you in, and you can see the contrast of light and dark, of different values. Another trick you can do is you can do it when you look at art, but you can also use it on your trees. If you have those old 3D glasses where you have the red and blue, you would close the eye behind the blue lens. Just use the red lens, and that works as a value checker. So you could look at it, and it turns everything into kind of gray version of itself, and you can see the darker and lighter much clearer. And you can see how, if you get the values right, even if the colors aren't exactly right, if you get the values right, it can still really look good and work as a piece. In a painting especially, but this can also be applied to your trees. Up closer, warmer colors, even the suit from the picture, I made it reddish. It wasn't red in the picture, but I wanted to warm it up and bring it closer to you, and I wanted to create a sense of depth in the piece. Even though it's a 2D piece, you get the impression of distance with the color change as you go towards that entranceway, that hole there in the rock or wherever it is. Here's a piece up these steps. Oh, there's a picture of my wife I recently did that I thought was where she looks cute. Yeah. But a lot of these design principles are at play even in a portrait, like my friend Bob's portrait. I did this of some local scenery, the Pagoda Kitchen and Bar, downtown Palm Harbor, Florida. And, I use these same design principles, wide to narrow, you follow the line. Here's the highlighted area with the light and some glow on the trees. These lines bring you in. Everything kind of brings you here to linger. And I have some verticals and things that keep you from going off the page. Value, the bright, the dark, contrast of the values, throughout the piece. Warmer colors, cooler colors. You don't see it as much in the night scene, but you can see what I'm doing. I apply these principles to the painting to make the painting all the more interesting and fun to view. I watch these. Let me turn this around here. Sorry, my phone isn't showing the button for turning the image back to me. Let me see here. Okay, well, it's not going to do it. All right, so let me get back to, I got a couple paintings up here I can show you. But, so yeah, these principles can be applied to the tree, the way you design, if you're bending branches, or you're, moving your foliage pads around, all these if you put this thinking into consideration, it can really help your design and take your trees to another level, especially if you're putting your trees in shows. When I first got into bonsai, I didn't really take it to that level. I never thought about, I just wanted to have a healthy tree that I like to look at and look like a big tree in nature. That was always the ultimate goal. And I'm going to see if I can fix this phone here. Hang on a second. Okay, now I'm turned around. Sorry about that. So yeah, you can apply these principles to your trees. If you're a beginner, still good to be aware of these. But the longer you're into this, it's like anything. The more you're in it, the more there is to learn. You never stop learning. And I've been doing bonsai for over 30 years, probably more like 36 years. So, this is where I'm at now, and I'm getting interested in the painting, and I'm hoping to show more of that in the future in these videos. I will never stop doing bonsai because I love it. I am downsizing my collection even more once the auction comes up in August here in in Florida. So, just so you know, you never stop learning, and you can always do more to improve those trees. So I hope this is helpful, and I'm going to attach to the end of this video my link for an ArtPal page where you can see where I put up some of my artwork. You can follow me on Facebook. Continue watching this channel. I do plan on having some videos which are going to be mostly painting, but also when I'm doing a project with a bonsai or something like that, I will video that. All right, so you all take care. Talk to you later.